Welcome to Inside the Mavs, presented by Aura. My name is Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host on 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Appreciate you joining me here for the latest episode of Inside the Mavs. You can download the podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. And if you're watching this on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports, make sure you like and comment on the video as well. A lot to get to in this episode today. So excited to bring in my guest for today's episode. He covers the Dallas Mavericks for Mavs Fans for Life. You can find him on Twitter at 65Lando. My man Landon Thomas joining me on the podcast today. Landon, what's going on?
Hey, Kevin, glad to be here. And like I said, like I always say when I see you, you're doing big things. So definitely a shout out to you.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate you, those kind words. And I'm happy to have you on the show today as
You
the
can send me
Mavericks are
my
ball.
Venmo payment.
look, when they see you on the show, they be like, hey man, Landon out here doing big things too, man. Look, I can't afford you just yet, but when I do, definitely I got you because you on your way to be able to be where I can't afford you, and somebody going to have to pay you the real big time to take care of you. So but at some point we're gonna take care of you though, for sure. But look, the Mavericks are crushing it right now. They're 17-6 in their last 23 games. This is a team right now, Landon, that is clicking on all cylinders. Before we get into anything specific in today's episode, what for you has stood out most about what this team has done over the last 23 games or so that sees them, as we record this, sixth in the West and making that climb up the West standings here?
Well, I mean, you really just said it is moving up the standings because the West is a gauntlet. Every single game matters. I know that's cliche to say, but it really does when you look at the standings every single morning. But probably the one thing that really stands out is the way that they're winning, because just watching this team over the years, they've been a live or die by the three. And they've won games where they shot really bad from three. And I think that really stands out to it's a testament to how they play now, which is more defensive based and also getting rebounds and points in the paint. But you see the difference when they win without the threes, and then now like the last Kings game when the threes are starting to fall with PJ and THJ, Derrick Jones Jr. and Exum's been pretty consistent, but those top three guys when they're hitting threes, it's really blowout wins. So that's really that has stand out to me the most.
Yeah, it's funny because that's a recipe for this team that we've seen in the past, where if shots aren't necessarily falling, this is a team that kind of hangs their heads on the defensive end and things go awry on that side. But nowadays, I mean, before the game against Sacramento on Tuesday, they were shooting around 33% from three. They had only made 10 or 11 threes against Utah. And then on the second night of a back-to-back, I mean, they dropped 22 3-pointers. I knew something was up when PJ Washington knocked down his first three-pointers of the game. I was like, okay, now wait a minute. Something's about to happen here, because PJ came out and was smoking from three, and it really just kind of went on. He went 4 of 6 from downtown. Tim Hardaway Jr. went 4 of 6 from three. Like, it was just a barrage of three-pointers. But as I was telling someone the other day, that when you marry the idea of this team shooting threes and knocking down threes and the way that they play now, I mean, you get a recipe for a 36-point beatdown on the road against a good Sacramento team. That's what we saw on Tuesday.
Yeah, we talked about it like a few days ago. We talked about how rough it is to play in Sacramento, especially for the Mavericks on the road. And you just said the hostile fans, and we saw the fans talking to Kyrie, talking to Luka, and it really didn't work out for them. They're taking a long walk home, but it's good to see the Mavericks change their identity on the fly too, especially like you said with PJ knocking those first few down. It gives not only him confidence, but it just gives the whole team confidence as well, that hey, we can also knock down threes. It's not just our defense that is changing. We can still play the same way that we used to, but we can also lock in on the defensive end. So it was good to see them do both.
Yeah, a team that over their last 23 games, ninth in the NBA in defensive rating. And it's all the conversation coming into this season was, okay, look, we know that Luka and Kyrie offensively are going to be spectacular for this team, the dynamic duo that the other going to score a ton of points. But if they can be somewhere close to average on defense, this is a team that maybe could win 45 to 50 games. And now what we've seen really since the turn, of February, this team has defended at an extremely high level, and it's coincided with the acquisitions, of course, of PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. Are you surprised at how well this team has been able to play defensively given what they've been able to do over the last 23, 24 games now?
I'm surprised. I mean, I think
yeah,
because, with the trades that they made, you kind of felt like the identity had to change. I mean, you saw it with, Gafford and PJ Washington. They had the players in place with Derrick Jones Jr. and Exum and well, before the injury, Josh Green and Lively, they had, but now you see a cohesive unit together where defense is the priority. I mean, not only the players talk about it, the coach talk about it, but you saw during that bad stretch before this 9-1 stretch, they weren't playing defense, and the players talked about them, locking in and having those tough conversations about they need to play defense. And now that you're seeing them, and now that you're seeing it come into fruition, it's really surprising, but not surprising because they talk about it, but it's surprising because they're doing it. And also, Luka and Kyrie are setting the pace defensively as well, because you see the role players on the team talk about if the leaders are doing, there's no excuse to not lock in defensively. And that's what's surprising to see is Luka and Kyrie, really giving it they're all on the defensive end, just like the specialists are doing as well.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch this team take their cues, not just from obviously with Gafford and what Lively been doing, but I mean, as you mentioned, Luka and Kyrie have been really leading the charge on both ends of the floor. Which, I mean, if you had told me Luka was going to be the guy, top 10 in steals, a guy that's diving on the floor for loose balls, and now making the real effort on the defensive end, I would have thought, okay, that's cool and all, but I really want to see it on the floor and actually it be executed. And Luka is doing the thing on the defensive end now that I don't think a lot of folks maybe thought he was maybe capable of, but more importantly, didn't think he may be willing to do. But now he's doing those things, and it's really helped turn the defense around as well.
And I want to see it take it a step even further. I think that's his next step, because he's good in the isolation, he's good in the post defense, but I want to see him, take that next step in the transition defense, not complain as much, get back on defense. Because you saw it in the Kings game, it was like a 4-on-1. He gets back, he takes the charge, and he creates the possession for the Mavericks. So I think once he takes that next step and on help defense as well, you really could see it's surprising to say you can really see a two-way player there, and you just see the potential that he does have. But he's still young, so I think he'll lock in and take that next step once you see the Mavs start winning, which they are doing now.
Let's take a quick break here on Inside the Mavs. More with Landon Thomas from Mavs Fans for Life here in just a moment. But let's hear from today's sponsor of our video and our podcast, and let's hear from Aura. Today's video is brought to you by Aura. Do a Google search on your name and email address to see how much information comes up about you. I was devastated by the amount of information that I could be seeing searching my name and profile, and I knew then I needed to be protected for not just myself, but also for my family. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives, it's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats that I can't see. It's really easy to set up, so I don't have to download several different apps to get things like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more. I get everything at one affordable price. You may already have one of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Aura is always on, doing the hard work to protect me and my family so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to aura.com/Kevin Gray to start your 2-week free trial. Please see the link in the description. Back here on Inside the Mavs. Thank you for hanging out with us through that quick break, and thank you to the sponsor of today's video and our podcast in Aura. We're here with Landon Thomas of Mavs Fans for Life, talking all things Mavericks as they are having won 9 of their last 10 games as we record this here. Of course, they play Sacramento on Friday night, looking to even up their season series against the Kings before they continue their 5-game road trip. And Landon, for a team that's 14 games above 500, we mentioned having won 9 of the last 10 games and what they've been able to do. And we started to touch on it a little bit in terms of the amount of winning that they're doing. NBA.com had his latest NBA MVP ladder up, and guess who's number 2 now all of a sudden? That's right. It's Luka Doncic there sitting at number 2 behind Nikola Jokic. I think for a lot of people, is the leader in the clubhouse right now when it comes to the NBA's MVP. But I think it speaks to when you're winning and your team is winning, those numbers not only are elevated based off of what he's been obviously doing in terms of Luka, but how it affects winning and what that does for people's perception of winning that particular war. How are you feeling about his potential push for the final, portion of the season in terms of the MVP race here?
I think, honestly, I think when you see him pass SGA, I think that's where you start to say, okay, now this is getting serious, because it's been Jokic and SGA for a while now. And I think, once the Mavericks, moved themselves into the 6th seed and they beat the Kings, not only beat them, but they dominated the Kings, like you said earlier, that is where you start to get the eyes of the national media, because you and I, we see it on a game-to-game basis, but just being here regional, but the national media, because it seems like when the Mavs are on national TV, they have a stinker or someone's out with injury, but now that they're healthy and they're on a groove and they're playing defense and you're seeing a team effort around Luka, you're really elevating Luka and his MVP candidacy. And I think now that you see the Mavericks doing what they want to do, and you see Luka having his triple-double type nights and just the first half against the Kings, those type of efforts where he's really not needed in the second half. I mean, it's a testament to him leading this team and him really being that valuable to the team, because if he didn't have that type of half, it would have been neck and neck. And I think Luka has a real chance. I think they have to do a little more. I think, to take votes away from Jokic. I think he's doing what he needs to do, but if they can go 7-3 in these last 10 games to hit 50 wins, can you imagine that 50 wins after this roller coaster season with injuries? That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a real chance.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think that's kind of the plateau that folks have been looking. Can you get to the 50-win mark? Can you finish, definitively in the top 6 to really boost that MVP candidacy? Because, Jokic has been spectacular. We know, obviously, they're the reigning NBA champions, and they have made a strong push since the All-Star break to really get to that number 1 seed. And right now they are. But there has been precedent with Jokic himself, Russell Westbrook in the past, where someone with the kind of numbers that Luka Doncic is putting up, he has a very strong chance to win the NBA's MVP. And I'm interested to see how they continue to do the Mavericks handle prosperity, because at one point when they had won 7 straight, we all know that they wound up losing 5 of 6. Now they've bounced back to win 9 of 10. And it feels like this team is on that kind of roll. And for the rest of this season now, how they continue, because, and you're right, you made a terrific point. Like, Luka carried them in that first half against the Kings, and then Kyrie takes over in the third quarter in particular and really is able to allow Luka not really to have to play, the fourth quarter at all, because Luka dealing with that, Achilles injury. So we'll see how he continues to manage that for the rest of the year. But I think that speaks to the balance of what this team's been able to create, with Luka obviously doing what he does, But now he's got a superstar teammate who we know has hit some of the biggest shots in the history of this game. Now playing alongside him, Kyrie has been spectacular for this team, and he's played as much as he's had. I think I saw a statistic the other day. This is the most consecutive games that he's played since 2016 when he was with Cleveland. Like, we're talking about a streak of 20 some odd games that he's played consecutively, and he hasn't done that in over 8 years. I think that just speaks to what the commitment is for Kyrie, given what he's doing right now.
That's insane. I was just thinking about that right when you said that. I was like, wow, that's really insane, and but we're also seeing it too. We're seeing it in the results of these games. Not only just the results of these games where they're moving up in the standings and winning games, we're seeing it on the floor. We're seeing it, the cohesiveness. I mean, we're seeing it, like you said, Kyrie in the second half. We're seeing it in a buzzer beater, that's talked around the league. It's really special to see these two, what they're doing right now. And, you know, that's what they brought him here for, to have this type of load and take the pressure off of Luka, because now Luka can play defense. He's not carrying the whole offense. You have a partner that can really uh, take pressure off you in the biggest of the games. And when you have that, it's easier to play on both sides of the ball. It's easier to be valuable to your team on different areas that you don't see in the box score. And I think that's why they're the perfect match. I think they're polar opposites, which is great. Because Luka, he makes his teammates' jobs easier, and he sets them up. And then Kyrie, he pushes his teammates. He gives the ball. He say, "You go score a basket." And Kyrie's calm, very calm demeanor, no matter where the game is. And Luka, he's so passionate where his emotions show. So they're like total opposites. But Kyrie, he has the championship DNA. He has the championship experience, so he knows what it takes. And Luka respects that. That's the biggest thing, is respect between the two.
Yeah, it's a perfect kind of yin and yang when it comes to,
It
as you
really
mentioned, the kind of
is.
the competitive fire that Luka Doncic has, and not to say that Kyrie doesn't, but his comes out in a much different way, and to the
Correct.
experience that he's been able to have, winning a championship, he's able to channel it a little bit differently. But I think that's the fun of watching these two grow together in terms of their relationship on and off the floor, and what that's been able to translate into in terms of wins for this team. And based off of what they're doing now, the conversation is starting to turn to, how dangerous can this team actually be? Yes, they still got, work to do in the final 10 games of the season, taking care of business, hopefully against Sacramento. You've got, a couple of games still against the Houston Rockets, against, the Golden State Warriors as well. Like, you still got real business to handle before we get to the end of the season. But how dangerous is this team, knowing what we've seen in terms of what they do defensively now, obviously what they do offensively? How dangerous is this team now in the Western Conference in your mind?
I mean, it's really, when you look down the Western Conference, I mean, I know a lot of people say Denver and then everybody else, but I think it's anybody's chance. I mean, you just saw the Mavericks beat Denver. You just saw them look like a different team. It's just a different Mavericks team. So I think they're as dangerous as anyone in the West. No matter where they match up in the first round, they just have to stay healthy, because that's the biggest thing. Now you see the team where they can win when they shoot horrible. They can win when Luka has a bad game. It's just, can you sustain that defense? Can you sustain rebounding, points in the paint? Can kid continue to make those ATO adjustments? And can you stay healthy when it matters? And I think that's where you're seeing the real Mavericks as a healthy team, with the additions of PJ and Gafford. You know, you can see where it goes for this team. Will the 3-point knock down, with THJ, will he have a great stretch to end the season heading into the playoffs? I think that would be huge for this team. Will PJ's 3-point shot go down for this final stretch? We're starting to see in the last 2 games. That would be huge for this team as well, because the defense looks like it's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
But now you just have to do something that will take you over the edge because you're going to play no matter who you play. It's going to be tough. And that's for the whole
Yeah.
Western Conference.
True. Yeah, the Western
This is
Conference has
so
been treacherous
tough.
all season long. Yeah. Like it's
So
been
tough.
treacherous all season. So, I mean, look, based off of what this team has done and what they have to do down the stretch, and you touched on it a little bit, the combination, and we touched on it a little bit throughout the show, but Gafford and Lively, their combination, and it's funny because we've been kind of looking for a third score for the Mavericks, if you will, but the way it's kind of turned out, they've got two guys who have really kind of combined to be that quote unquote third scorer. You've got, Gafford and Lively playing a combination of, 40 some odd minutes together, but they're producing over 23 points per game, well over 13 rebounds a game, 3 block shots. We're talking about these two combined together. And at no point is either one of them off the floor, it feels like, for most games now. And it's really allowed them to play, whether it's Gafford on the floor starting or Lively coming off the bench, they can play the same style of play that they want to because both of those guys have a similar skill set, which I think has allowed that continuity to continue to grow, whether Gafford's on the floor or whether Lively's on the floor for this team.
Yeah, it's really incredible to see just not only what they're doing on the court, like you mentioned, but them working together. That's the real beauty of this pairing is both of them like each other. That whether they start or they come off the bench, they help each other. Especially a new guy coming to the team midway through the season, and honestly, he takes your spot. And you're the rookie. Everyone is highlighting all the great things you do, and then you have a veteran, which is weird to say because he's only a few years older. uh,
Yeah.
come in and really take your spot, and you're still helping him with things on the court that Luka likes to do or Kyrie likes to do, stuff like that, and vice versa. And Gafford's teaching him because he's been in more situations on the court in the NBA on here's how to stay out of foul trouble, here's how to set screens on this, wait just a little longer, stuff like that. That's really great to see because like you said, they're both similar now, especially with Lively improving his foul trouble, getting out of foul trouble, and then also Gafford improving his passing, which Lively does really well. So they're
Mm-hmm.
both helping each other and elevating each other. And you're seeing on the court when one has a bad game, the other one picks them up. And when both of them have great games, it's hard to beat the Mavericks. That's what you've seen in this 9-1 stretch.
Yeah, I just have been so impressed with Dereck Lively as not just as a player, but the maturity for a guy that's just now 20 years old. Because you're
Hmm.
right. I mean, he
Yeah.
was the starter for this team. And now Gafford, I mean, you give credit to Jason Kidd for making the adjustment, to seeing some things differently in terms of what they wanted to do on the defensive end. But Lively hasn't missed a beat. In fact, he has come in and just played his role. I think about the game against Sacramento. He did a terrific job, especially in that third quarter, against Domantas Sabonis, and really gave him some issues, which is, again, a credit to him because earlier this season in the 2 games in Dallas, I mean, Sabonis had my man in a blender. Like, he was turning him
Yep.
inside out. All like, it was just bad for him. But he has grown and continued to grow in that way. And I think for Lively, his growth is going to be something that I look forward to watching for the next several years because he's going to be a really, really good player in this league. And he has shown a lot of that throughout the course of this season so far.
Yeah, and you hit it right on the head because not only has he shown his greatness and maturity so young too, it it also just leads to great basketball. It leads to success, because you mentioned the Sacramento game. He played more minutes than Gafford, off the
Mm-hmm.
bench. Like as long as he's gonna have minutes. He's gonna get his spots, and when he plays well, he's gonna play more than Gafford. So, it's just a great pairing, and I'm still surprised too, just how I know what he's been. We both know what he's been through, but
Mm-hmm.
still just to see his maturity, because he has tough days but you will never see it on his face. You will never see it in his emotions, and you'll never see it on the court. And that's what I love about him at an early age too.
Yeah, and only good things to come for him as the rest of his career has gone on. But he has made a huge impact already this season for this team. And as we move forward with this team going forward for the rest of the season, the 10 games that they have as they complete their 5-game road trip, they still got games, at home against, teams like Atlanta, who had a big win the other day against, the Boston Celtics. Like the schedule is not as a lot of folks have made of how easy the schedule was coming down the stretch. It feels like a little bit tougher because, Houston's out here won 10 straight games. Like, Golden State's fighting for their playoff lives. Like, there's teams that are really playing some good basketball right now. Is this team capable of what we've seen from the change in terms of their defensive identity? Obviously, Luka and Kyrie. Is this team capable of finishing in that top 6, given what they still got to do? And how do they get there based on what they've got to do down the stretch to get to that top 6?
Well, they definitely have to win the second game against the Kings because that gives you the tiebreaker because it's a 2-2 season series, but the Mavericks have a better division record. And, that would also give them the tiebreaker over the Pelicans, the Kings, and the Suns. The Pelicans are 2-2, but they have a better division. The Mavs have a better division record, and they have the season, they have the season over the Suns. So that gives me, the impression that they will keep the 6th seed if they beat the Kings for the second time, but they do have to win against the Rockets twice down the stretch. And like you said, early on, it would look like a easier schedule, but the Rockets are like the hottest team right now. So, because you want to keep that division record against the teams that you're 2-2 against. So, I think they will keep the 6th seed, just from going off of how they're playing now. Their identity has went from a 3-point shooting team around Luka to a defensive minded team around their 2 superstars. So I think they can hold on to that 6th seed, and I think you just have to stay healthy. You just have to stay healthy, get into the playoffs. I think they can.
Yeah, and they're dealing with a little bit of health in terms of, Josh Green out right now with the ankle sprain. Mike Cleva dealing with some knee soreness. Obviously, Luka and monitoring that whole Achilles situation because Achilles is nothing to play with when it comes to,
Serious.
especially the usage rate for Luka Doncic. And I'm just excited to see this team continue to put forward the growth that they have shown and what that means for them against these teams, as you mentioned. Houston right now, arguably the hottest team in the league, and you give them credit for the way that Jalen Green's been able to turn it around for them because he has turned into a star down there in Houston, playing extremely well. Before we end today, I want to ask you about this because before we recorded today's episode, there was some reporting out of The Athletic that Jason Kidd is hoping to get a contract extension, by the time we get to season's end, which is obviously – got Mavericks fans, talking quite a bit because, the MFFLs, I love them. I absolutely love this fan base, and they are opinionated, they're smart, but they're very passionate about this basketball team. They've had thoughts already when it comes to the idea of Jason Kidd getting a potential contract extension. Where are you in terms of the head coach and what he has been able to do, especially when we've looked at this turnaround for this team defensively, but overall, where are you in terms of what Jason Kidd is and what he can still be for this team? If that's something that should be warranted for him going forward now.
Kevin, honestly, I'm in the middle when it comes to Jason Kidd. I applaud him when he does great, and I criticize when he does bad. I don't think he's as bad as the fan base makes it seem, and and I also don't think he's as good as when the Mavericks are on big stretches like now. Like he's a top coach. I think he's more in the middle of the league when it comes to coaches.
Sure.
And I think the players love him. Obviously, Luka loves him. He's one of Kyrie's mentors. The front office loves him. Dirk, he was part of that choosing group. And when it comes to just how he's doing overall, I applaud him because he's doing good right now. He made, like you mentioned, he made the adjustments. He moved Derrick Jones Jr. and Daniel Gafford into the starting lineup, and look what
Mhm.
that has done. The Mavericks are 11-1 when Gafford starts, and he's noticed that. And, you don't put as much pressure on Lively, or rookie. Now Lively's doing great as the backup, and I think he's also done great things by pushing the pace. This team was very slow the previous years, and that's worked out. He's found a rhythm balance between Luka and Kyrie. He's back to his defensive mindset, which he came into Dallas with, and he's really the polar opposite of Rick Carlisle, which I think is great for Luka and Kyrie, because even Kyrie said the other day, he really allows the team to have communication amongst themselves. How do they figure it out on the court when they're in tough situations? And I think that allows the freedom and creativity that you see with Luka and Kyrie. I don't think that will work under a micromanager. So I think he works well for the Mavericks. You have to have some assistants who are really good at X's and O's. But I think overall he's doing good right now. And if he can get this team to a 50-win team, that's really impressive, especially with the injuries and all the different starting lineups. And they're clutch. They're the best clutch team
Yes,
in the league. So you got to give
they
them
are.
props. But the
Yeah,
extension,
it
pump the brakes. just pump the brakes. Can we get to playoffs?
and I think that's where
Pump
a
the
lot of
brakes.
Mavs fans are. Like they want to see more results on the floor and into the postseason before, granting a contract extension for the coach. But you're right. I mean, the turnaround. Just think about where this team was a year ago. A team that was careening toward a 38-44 record, finishing
Mhm.
11th in the West. Obviously with the injuries with Luka and Kyrie, you obviously were able to turn it into a Dereck Lively, lottery pick. But at the same time, to think that where they were last year to where they were now to where they are now, and the discussion of a possible contract extension, it just shows you the turnaround that this team has made and the way that they've been able to do it really on the fly since the All-Star break, which I think is something that doesn't go as talked about as much as, yeah, teams try to make moves to be able to change the way that they're playing to improve their team, but it is extremely difficult to change not only your identity, but get guys to gel and mesh on the fly during
Mhm.
the middle of a postseason run or a potential postseason run. And that's what the Mavericks have been able to do. And, some of that is due to Jason Kidd's ability to manage. He's a player's coach. The players love him.
Yeah.
They love playing for him. And his ability to connect with them has allowed them to be able to have this kind of transition here. And it's paying off right now. Right now, it's paying off.
It really is, and it's good to see, because that's what we saw 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And you're starting to see it again. He's really good, like you said, on the fly. Like he really has the same mindset as Kyrie. You never see him show emotion, even when they're up like they are now, or when they're buried down when you think, the sky is falling, So he has that demeanor where he makes everything calm. And I think you need to have that as a coach, especially a player's coach. You need to make sure everybody feels calm no matter how things are going, and stay focused on the main objective and the main goal for the team.
Well, this Mavericks team has a lot of work to do still in the final 10 games of the season, but right now they back up. Like 43-29, they up right now, and the
Yeah.
vibes are good for this team based off of what they're doing, what they're achieving, having won 9 of 10 and looking to continue to move up the Western Conference standings. Because I mean, it's hard to believe, and I couldn't believe I'm saying this now based off what was happening just a few weeks ago. I mean, this team is within striking distance of possibly getting home court advantage in the first round by watching the Clippers free fall the way that they had. They were able to get a win over Philadelphia, the other night.
Mhm.
But at the same time, the Clippers have been, dismal as of late. And now the 4 seed is within striking distance. If you had told me, Kevin, by the time we get to the end of March, that the Mavericks have a chance to catch, the Clippers for the 4 seed in the West, I'd have told you were nuts. But that's exactly where we are right now, given what the Mavericks have been doing, what the rest of the West has been happening over the last few weeks at this point.
Yeah, it's insane to just think where the standings will be a week from now, because
Yes.
everybody is playing tough schedules in the West. It's really tough, nail biter type games. Even you just said it, the Clippers barely won over the 76ers. Like every single game that all these teams have, it's going to go down to the wire, which makes basketball fun, which makes the play-in, the implementation of the play-in fun as well.
Yeah, it's made for an exciting basketball down the stretch, and a lot more teams are in it to be able to have a chance to make the postseason. So it'll be fun over these last couple of weeks here as we play the final 10 games of the regular season. Landon, tell the folks so they can find you, what you got going on, man.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter or /X, whatever you have it, at 65Lando. And you can follow all of our platforms, Mavs Fans for Life, on YouTube, X, Facebook, and Instagram.
Landon does a tremendous job covering this team. He's a photographer who's got some of the best. Look, if you want some of the best photos that you've seen from this team throughout the season, go follow Landon, because my favorite picture from you so far this season, the Luka is in front of Kyrie. Kyrie's letting the ball roll on the floor, and it looks like Luka is his personal protector, just standing in front of him, looking like an offensive lineman, waiting for his quarterback to get ready to pick up the ball and make the play. I thought that shot was absolutely incredible, and just the imagery and the way that those two in that particular moment look, it was just an incredible photo. That's by far my favorite picture of what you've done throughout the season so far this year.
Thanks, good. I appreciate that. A lot of fans loved it, and a lot of media members, especially you, who covers the Cowboys too, kind of gave you that crossover,
Mm-hmm.
that football crossover. Protected the quarterback, but appreciate you as always. And like I said earlier in the podcast, you're doing great things as well. So definitely always like talking to you at games and online as well.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Looking forward to seeing the work that you continue to do for this team, not only for the rest of the season, but as time goes on, because you do a great job covering this team. I'm happy that you were able to stop down on the podcast with me today and have a good time here. Hopefully, you had a good time here on Inside the Mavs today.
Yeah, anytime you need me, just let me know.
Appreciate it. That'll do it for this episode of Inside the Mavs. Again, thank you to Landon Thomas of Mavs Fans for Life for joining me here on the episode today. Make sure you like and comment on the video as well if you're watching this on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports. And also download and subscribe to Inside the Mavs, the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak, wherever you get your podcast for free on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. I'll be back on Monday to recap what is a huge weekend of basketball for your Dallas Mavericks as they take on Sacramento and continue their road trip throughout the course of the weekend. And I'll have my game recaps that you can follow on YouTube at Kevin Gray Sports. Again, my name is Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host on 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. This has been Inside the Mavs. We'll talk to you later. Peace.